Hi, welcome to Kelsey Ed, and today we're looking at types of storage, specifically magnetic, optical, and solid state. We're going to take a look at the principles of operation, the advantages and disadvantages of each, and then we'll run over a couple of examination questions. If you enjoy this content or you want to know when new videos in the series are arriving, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. We'll get into each of these three different types, magnetic, optical, and solid state. I just want to mention here about optical storage specifically and the CD, DVD, and Blu-ray. And just looking at what is this difference here with CD, CDR, CDRW, DVD, DVD-R, DVD-RW, and so on. So what this means is this is just the standard DVD definition. This is DVD-R, which means it is a read-only device. So you can't write to it, you can't change it. Once it's been written, that's it. It's a read-only device. And then after that is RW. So that is a read-write, which means that you can rewrite what is written upon it. So a DVD-R and CDR are going to be something really that is kind of published, or you know that you're only going to write to it one time and it's done. Whereas RW is something you might use as more of a portable medium to read and write onto a disc. I want to explain that now because there's a lot of other stuff to talk about with the CDs and their principles of operation. So have a look at this overall table, and then we're going to now have a look at each one individually. So first of all is our magnetic storage, and specifically we're talking about hard disk drives, or known as a HDD. And there are two different types. There is an external HDD, which looks like this, and that is portable, and you can plug it into your device and access storage, read and write. And then there is an internal HDD, which is static inside of the computer that you are using. So how does this work? What are the principles of operation? So what you can see here in this diagram is that there are concentric tracks. These are these circular tracks, and that's where our bit patterns are stored upon. Then there is a read-write head, which is attached here to this mechanical arm, and as the disk is spinning, the read-write head will move across this magnetized disk in order to read the data. So what are the properties of a HDD? Well, specifically, one of the main reasons that people might use a HDD is because it is much cheaper than the solid state drive, which we'll talk about a little bit after. Now, it does have slower access speeds than the solid state drive because it has movable parts. The disk has to spin, the read-write head has to get to that specific location. So magnetic storage, because it has those movable parts, is also less durable. So when we talk about durable, that's how easy it is to break or get damaged. And because it is less durable, that also makes it less portable. So if you had a laptop with a HDD in it, it's more likely to get damaged when you're moving it around or begin to have issues reading and writing data. Where is it used? Well, we tend to use it in personal computers and servers, which are two very static, non-moving locations. So servers specifically have a huge amount of data that needs to be stored, and they're just static in a server room, temperature controlled, and they will not be moving anywhere. For that reason, because a hard disk drive is not moving, it's less likely to get damaged, but it is also substantially cheaper. So if you've got a huge amount of data to store, this is a much cheaper option than a solid state drive, which you probably don't need to have huge access speeds or durability. And then also there are some limitations with SSDs in terms of read-write cycles, so you may prefer to go with a hard disk drive. So next is optical storage. So optical storage is our discs. So CD, DVD, Blu-ray, these are all disc technologies. And the way that the disc is working is that it is a circle, you will have seen this, but there is a spiral track going around the disc. So that's one continuous spiral track. And there are bit patterns stored upon it using these pits and lands, or pits and bumps. And we're taking a look at how that works exactly. So here is an example of these pits and lands. What is happening is the light is being shone upon it. So either a blue laser or a red laser, depending on which disc it is, will be shone upon the surface of the disc. And if it is a pit, which is a groove inside of it, then the light reflection will not come back to the prism and light sensor, never will read as being no light. Whereas if it is a land which is flat, then it will reflect right back, hit the light sensor, and then that can be measured as receiving light. Now, each storage disk is a little bit different from each other, and so you might want to memorize this table to help you during an examination. So two of them, the CD and the DVD, you see are highlighted in red here. They use a red laser to read them. So you can remember kind of default red laser, and then the Blu-ray is using a blue laser. So that's the easy difference to remember there. Now, Blu-ray stores substantially more data. 50 gigabytes of data can be stored on a Blu-ray as opposed to a CD and DVD. So CD has the lowest one, and that is a single layer technology. It has just 700 megabytes, whereas the DVD is this dual layer polycarbonate, and that is allowing for more data to be stored, and that gives us up to 4 to 8 gigabytes of storage. So you might ask, well, hold on, how come the Blu-ray is only a single layer and it can store up to 50 gigabytes? Well, the Blu-ray disc is using a blue ultraviolet laser, and that actually has a different angle of reflection. So that allows a shorter distance in the waves, which means we can store more data on the disc, and also we can transfer that data faster. So it has the fastest access speeds and the largest storage size out of these three options here. Another advantage as well with Blu-ray, if you have to do a comparison between the CD and DVD, is that they actually have a built-in secured layer of encryption also. So that's a great benefit. Why do we use these? Well, they're often used for transferring files between devices, although that may be becoming less common now with the introduction of solid state. So you're less likely to sort of back things up to a CD now. So CDs are used with publishing specifically for music, games, software, things that come from a manufacturer will be published onto a CD. But we see that changing a lot now with the implementation of cloud technology and cloud storage, and you'll probably yourself be very familiar with just downloading the game that you like and downloading the software you want and using things like streaming services for music instead of buying a physical CD. So what are the advantages? Well, they are small in physical size, so that makes them really, really portable, and they're cheap to purchase also. So what are the disadvantages of this? Well, they're easily scratched or snapped, so that makes them not really very durable in a long term. They also have really quite a small storage size in general. Of course, Blu-ray is quite large, but overall it's quite a small storage size. And it also has slower access speeds for the read and write cycles, because again, it has to move, the disk has to spin in order for it to be read. And it also just becoming really a more antiquated technology, which means it's just getting outdated and not going to be used for so much longer. Now, there's another type of optical storage which we haven't mentioned because it has a slightly different dynamic, and that is the DVD RAM. And the reason I put this one separately is because it actually has a different structure in that instead of having a spiral track like a DVD, CD, and Blu-ray, it actually uses concentric tracks, so like the hard drive. And those concentric tracks mean that you can have multiple read-write operations happening at the same time. So it can be looking at different tracks at the same time as each other, so multiple can occur at once. And also a great advantage with the DVD RAM is that it has a really long life for write cycles. So of course we have lots of reading, but how many times can you rewrite to that disk? And it can rewrite about 100,000 times, which is a really big read-write operation. So our last technology is the solid state storage, and there's three main ones that we'll look at, which is our solid state drive. So that's this here. We have our flash memory and thumb drives, not to be called a USB. Please do not refer to this as a USB in the examination. That stands for Universal Serial Bus, and that is our data transmission. It's cable in a USB port. Do not get that confused. And the SD memory card which you may be familiar and used in sort of a digital camera or maybe inside of your laptop also. So what are our principles of operation with this? Well, you'll notice here this is a chip, this is a circuit board, and there are NANDs upon this. Because it's a chip, that means there are no moving parts, and it's a really fast access. Electrons are charged across the chip and they become trapped between layers, and these charged electrons can then be read as zeros and ones. And so these non-moving parts and small size make them just amazing for smartphones, laptops, portable storage. You 100% will have this inside of your smartphone, probably in a laptop if it's more recent and modern, and you may even have a memory stick that you're carrying around with you. So the advantages of this are that it is a small physical size, so it's very portable and fits into smaller devices. So as I mentioned with your smartphone, you want to have a small size smartphone. This allows you to have access to a whole entire computer in your pocket with just the smallest memory size, and it is highly, highly durable. So think about everything that your mobile phone goes through. That goes everywhere with you. You may drop it on the floor, it may get bumped, it may get wet. A lot of things can happen to this mobile phone, and because it has no moving parts, it's highly durable. It's also super fast access, so you can get all that data that you need really, really fast. Now, what are the disadvantages? Because it kind of seems like there aren't any right now. But the main thing is that they actually have a sort of limited number of read-write cycles. That doesn't mean that they don't have a huge amount or some longevity to them, but you should be aware that there is a limitation to the number of times that it can perform a read-write operation. So it's not maybe a long-term one. As we mentioned earlier, this is why you might not find this in your sort of server storages. It's also pretty expensive when compared to a HDD. So basically, for the same amount of data, the same storage size, it is much more expensive to buy an SSD than it is to buy a HDD. All right, so that's the main information. Let's get into some exam questions and see what we have learned so far. This may be the point where you want to pause the video, answer this question yourself, and then we can go over the answers together. So here are 6 statements that have been given about storage devices. We need to put a tick to show whether it applies to the HDD storage or the solid state drive. It's really important to read these questions carefully because there's a very, very important line here that says some statements can be applied to both. So some of these statements here are going to need to tick in both locations. So first of all, it has a limited number of read-write cycles. Well, what we've mentioned, that is one of the disadvantages of an SSD. It uses magnetic properties. So we only have one magnetic storage type. It's not solid state, so it's our HDD. It has moving parts. Well, there's no moving parts in an SSD. It's a chip. It is our HDD that has the magnetic disk spinning and the moving read-write head. So it is a non-volatile storage. Well, what's non-volatile? We've covered this before when we looked at RAM and ROM. A non-volatile storage is one that will not be lost when the computer is turned off. Volatile is like RAM, it will be lost. So any secondary storage is in fact a non-volatile storage. So this would apply to both the HDD and the SSD. It can be used as an external storage device to back up data. Well, absolutely, we can get external hard drives in both a HDD and an SSD. Both are available externally. So again, that is the 2. On this one, it uses flash memory. So where's the flash memory? HDD is magnetic, SSD is flash memory. All right, let's look at our next exam question. This one's a little bit more written. So now we want to know what are 2 advantages of using a magnetic storage rather than a solid state storage. It's asking us to give 2 advantages. So that means that we need to present some facts very clearly, no opinion, fact and a full sentence, just straight up, what is an advantage? We don't need to know anything about the SSD, just really what is the advantage. So a magnetic storage is cheaper than solid state. We mentioned that, that's why we were using it in a static PC or a server. When you buy the same amount of storage size, this will be cheaper. Secondly, it has a longer life cycle. So the life cycle is the lifespan of the device. And we mentioned that there is a limit on read-write operations with solid state. So therefore, the magnetic storage has a longer life cycle and it can perform more read-write operations than the solid state. So these are its advantages over solid state. We don't need to go into detail about solid state a lot. We're just going to mention, yeah, magnetic's better because of this. So our last one here is a bit of a longer question, and in this one it's asking us to explain. So when we explain an answer, then we really have to give full sentences still, but there has to be some reasoning behind it. And with the differences, you're really going to present a reasoning and more of an argument. So Marley wants to store a video he has created for a school project, and he considers using a DVD or a Blu-ray to store the video. So we need to discuss what is going to be better for him, and we can give you some differences between them. So we're not going to tell him exactly which one he should choose. We want to give him some differences. The DVD holds around 4 gigabytes of data, whereas a Blu-ray can store 50 gigabytes of data. So remember that table we looked at earlier? If you memorize these key points and differences between them, this is really going to help you in an answer like this. So what we know is that a Blu-ray has a much larger storage size than a DVD. So next, as we mentioned, the Blu-ray is using that ultraviolet laser, whereas a DVD is using a red laser for reading. This might be a consideration just based on the player that Marley has, but we don't actually have to recommend Marley they needs to have this player, but you could mention that you're going to need a Blu-ray player because it reads with a blue light wave. But also relating to that is that the DVD would have a much slower transfer rate than the Blu-ray because of that type of light and the angle of reflection, which is also responsible for the storage size earlier mentioned too. And so lastly, it is a single layer polycarbonate on the Blu-ray as opposed to a dual layer polycarbonate on the DVD. So again, this is where we can see that we're really just looking to name differences. It's not about which one do you think is better and which one should you recommend. Just name out all the differences that you know and make sure you go back and just learn that table in the earlier slides so that you know the difference between sizes, layers, and lights. So you only need to know 2 reasons here. These are 4 different ones. If you can remember just 2 of them in an exam and you can put it into a full sentence answer, knock it out. Sometimes there may be 2 that kind of go together, but actually will give you 2 points. So where possible, try to separate them out as you can. So here, the type of light waves and the angle of reflection and the ultraviolet blue laser, it could be really easy to sort of end up blending those 2 answers together. But if you can separate them out, one is the laser specifically, and then one is more about how that laser has an effect. That's 2 solid marks that you could take there. Okay, so last question. Let's take a look at this one, which mentions the differences between a DVD-R and a DVD-RAM. So first we need to think about what is this R meaning. And if you remember from the start of the video, a DVD-R is a read only. So what does that mean? This disc can only be read from. The contents of it have been burned to it permanently, and we can only read that device. Whereas a DVD-RAM, that one is a read-write compared to that. So that's one thing we can instantly know is a difference between them. Remember also that DVD-RAM and DVD-R have a slightly different makeup in their disk type. What we want to do here is make sure that we describe in full sentences and reasoning between the devices, because we're going to say the differences between them. So it's not advantages where we just give one, it's differences, so we've got to mention both sides of our argument. And so the DVD, that is one spiral track. So DVD, CD, Blu-ray, that one spiral track, whereas our DVD-RAM was concentric tracks. Now, because it's in concentric tracks, the DVD-RAM can be read and written at the same time. So it allows multiple operations to occur at one time, whereas a DVD can only access one part of that spiral track. So it is a read only, but it can only also perform one operation. DVD-RAM can be read and written at the same time. So multiple operations can occur at the same time, whereas the DVD-R is only going to be able to perform one operation, one read at a time. Sorry, I probably should have put DVD-R here, but I think they would forgive you. And lastly, so not only can it only perform one operation at a time, but a DVD-R is a read-only device. It cannot be written to. It is burned in there forever. So the DVD RAM can perform the read and write, but a DVD-R is read only. So make sure you understand your RWs, and then also make sure you remember that RAM, the DVD RAM, is separate from the makeup of the CD, DVD, and Blu-ray with the spiral versus concentric tracks. I hope you found today's video really helpful and useful for preparing for your exam or just for learning this topic. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and keep posted and looking out for new videos. We try to upload them whenever we can. Thank you for watching Kelsey Ed.